Traditions, values, culture. These are the things that help us remember where we came from. It's time for Family Heritage Stories.
I'm Doug Jessup.
And I'm Nicea DeGering, and welcome to Family Heritage Stories, where we talk about what makes us, things like traditions, values, and culture.
How are these things passed down from generation to generation? Through deeds, through words, and through stories. I want to welcome this lady right here, my new host, Nicea DeGering. We're going to be hearing from her later in the show.
What kind of values are you passing down to the next generation?
The illustrious Jason Hewlett.
I'm already laughing.
Oh, illustrious.
The illustrious.
It's like, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, you know, what's your gig?
Yeah, so I get to entertain for corporate events as well as be a motivational, inspirational speaker. And I fuse all of the entertainment, comedy, music, all kinds of fun impressions into an inspirational message called The Promise.
The Promise?
Yeah, so I've been doing that for over 20 years now. And it's a pretty darn fun thing to do. I get to make people smile, make them think, make them go, hey, what's my voice? What makes me unique? Kind of like you with your signature hat. I call it signature moves. And we all have signature moves to discover. And so I just teach people through impressions of other people. I say, this is the voice of Louis Armstrong. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And it's like, he was told not to do that because they didn't love his voice, but he knew that was the voice he had. And we should all keep the promise to share that which makes us uniquely who we are.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. When did you discover that you could do the voices and all that kind of fun stuff?
Oh, I mean, early on. I grew up in the 80s in Park City, and so I was a kid that grew up hearing, well, voices like on the TV. Mickey Mouse, Donald, Goofy, the Disney voices. Oh boy, hi everybody, Mickey Mouse here. Oh, here's Goofy, where's Donald? You know, so I was doing just crazy sounds as a kid. And then Pee Wee Herman came along. You know, you're not allowed to do that in schools anymore. But like, I just started to figure out that I could mimic people pretty well. And then found out later on, I went to Waterford, a private school in Sandy, Utah. And a teacher there heard me singing in the hall. And she said, you need to be in the choir. You can do amazing things with your voice. And she said, what can you do? And I showed her some of those voices. And then she said, you have a gift. You are going to make a living with that voice, and I'm going to teach you. Her name was Mrs. Rosalind Hall. She now teaches at BYU. She's a legend.
Hi, Rosalind.
Hi, Roz.
Okay.
Yeah, so she said, come into my classroom, and I sang for her stuff that I knew nobody else could do, like the Chipmunks, Alvin and the Chipmunks from the 50s, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Christmas, Christmas time is near, time for toys and time for... And she said, that's incredible. So she helped me discover my voice, and now I teach how leaders are supposed to help each other discover their gifts. It's great.
Okay, so why is it the promise? What's the phrase there?
Good
why?
question. I mean, I do so many events where these leaders are saying, let's set goals, let's hit our goals, let's reach our goals. And I like to say, why set a goal when you can make a promise? Because if you set a goal and you miss it, you set another one. But if you make a promise and you break it, that's a one and done. So what are the things that are the sacred goals, the non-negotiables, that which you're just going to say, I will do this no matter what, and that's why I call it the promise. It's the highest level of engagement we commit to in any experience. So it's a fun way for me. If I said to you, hey Doug, I set a goal to be there on time for your, for this recording, that wouldn't be enough. I'd be like, hey man, I promise I'll be there. And you're like, okay, I believe you. That's the difference.
Now, a little birdie told me, and I don't know I'm trying to figure out what birdie voice it was, but a little birdie told me that you used to perform in this little place down the road called Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, yeah, I've had a lot of opportunities there, and that's where my career began. I was an impersonator of Elton John and Ricky Martin. So
okay.
I looked like both of them, put on the right costume, and all I had to do was perfect the signature moves of each guy. And I was for a show called Legends in Concert, and it was at the Imperial Palace. And I got to travel all around America doing the show as Elton and Ricky Martin with Elvis impersonators and Tina Turner and Whitney Houston, all these people that were great impersonators. And eventually I put together a one-man show of over 100 voices that were just, I'd bounce in and out of different voices, like the Bee Gees. Well, you can't tell by the way I sing this song. I'm singing high, but not for long. Then I'm going into, I hear that train a-coming. It's rolling around the bend. So I'm just bouncing in and out of voices. And I all of a sudden had people looking at me at casinos wanting me to come be the headliner. And so, yeah, we had a really neat opportunity there for a couple of years to consider what I was going to do and become. That didn't work out, but I'm grateful that I get to do what I do and where I've gone. It's been very cool.
So if you don't mind me asking, when you say it didn't work out, okay, come on. I'm not going to lay you off the hook that fast, okay? So there's a story behind why it didn't work out.
Yeah, and the short answer is that as I'm sitting across the table from casino billionaire that wants me to come into his casino and help him, my wife and I had driven our Subaru from Salt Lake down to Las Vegas, and we didn't realize we were being offered the opportunity of a lifetime. All I had to do was sign on the dotted line, and it said, you have to change your act, you have to make it more conducive to our audience, to our clientele. And at the time, the new slogan in Vegas was, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And my family-friendly, G-rated performance was no longer something they wanted. They wanted to mature my presentation, and we couldn't come to terms for what that would look like. And so that's why I talk about the promises. What are you willing to promise yourself that no offer can entice you to anything different?
The last words that my grandfather said were, "Please remember me." This is Doug Jessup. It would be my honor to help you share your story with a private in-studio interview with a video for you to keep. Go to FamilyHeritageStories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview. There's something special about the bond between a grandparent and a grandchild. How would you answer this question? Tell me about your grandma and grandpa. No matter how young or how old you are, everybody has a reply to these things. So we're going to do a little pop quiz.
Go ahead.
Okay. In just, not necessarily one or two words, but a little paragraph, if you will. Okay. And if you need to expand, go for it. But I'm going to ask you about 4 people in your life. 4 people. Okay. So let's first start with your dad's side, the muses. Okay. Tell me about your dad's dad, your grandfather.
Tall. 6'4", 6'5". I'm tall because of him. I remember him jogging around the swimming pool they owned in Phoenix every morning for exercise, thinking he's going to fall in and I'm ready to laugh. Like he would just jog around and around and around. I look like him. Mm-hmm.
Okay, your dad's mom, so your grandma.
Could shop like no one I've ever seen. Like I learned to shop. It's genetically her fault that I love them all so much, or online or what. I mean, she wouldn't even know what that was. But she took me to Neiman's for the first time.
Ooh.
I thought I was the fanciest girl in town when my grandmother took me into Neiman Marcus.
How old were you think about? Remember?
7, 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Get to go to Grandma to Neiman. Wow,
Right.
That's a big deal.
I don't think we bought anything, but just to walk around and women were in fur coats in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how cool is this?
Okay, let's go to mom's side. Okay. Your grandfather, so your mom's dad.
Grouchy.
Okay.
So grouchy. And poor thing, he was 75 when I was born. So of course he was grouchy. By the time I was 10, he was 85, and he was a farmer, and I would follow him around while he milked the cows, and he would tell me not to get away, but git, G-I-T, git. I was always like, that must mean stay. So I would drive my grandfather nuts, following him around that farm while he would yell at me, git. That's what I remember about him.
Okay. How about grandma?
The worst cook ever. Like, everything she made was disgusting, and I had to eat it as a kid, and I hated it. I just remember, like, the bananas were rotten on the banana cream pie, and if she ever made vegetables, I was like, what even is that? It was mush. She was wanted to hug you, wanted to kiss your face, and it was wet, always sloppy as a kid. You were like, ugh. But the love I felt for her Like they knew she didn't know how to not love you, but please, Grandma, don't cook for me ever again. As a kid, I hated, I dreaded it. Were those the responses you were expecting?
Well, you know what's cool is everybody's got a reply. I mean, you know, I'm interviewing a guy, this big, you know, big, huge, tattooed, bearded guy and everything, and he wept talking about his gramps. You know, and it's those unconditional love moments that you go, okay, because like it or not, your family is your family, and you do learn things, and you do, you know, have things passed down. It's like, okay, now I know that the tall shopper here. Okay, I'm just.
Well, and whatever relationship you had, like look at mine with my grandfather. You know, that I always thought he was so like grouchy. I have to kiss him, and he was like, oh, good. And but that's who you are. That's so much a part of who I am is who they were. And that's why this and what you do is so interesting.
And you're going to start doing too. Just saying, okay. So have you learned to cook?
Yes.
Okay, just had to
Oh, I
ask.
didn't learn to cook for my grandma. My mother was an amazing cook because her mother was not.
Oh,
Yeah.
good point.
So she taught me how to cook.
So somebody out there is watching right now, okay, and they're watching us chat and everything, okay? We're both TV personalities, been doing this for a long time. Why should somebody have their family heritage story remembered?
Because these little things you and I have been talking about, we forget. These little moments, these little stories, the connections that I just told you about my grandmother and my grandfather. What if I don't remember that in 10 years? What if I forgot that I would follow him around? Right? What if I forgot that her banana cream pie was the worst thing I've ever had? Those moments make you who you are. And if you don't write them down, if you don't have them saved somewhere, they're gone. And I think that it's so invaluable to have that in your life, to share it with your children and your grandchildren and who's ever else to come, because that's what makes life worth living. These little stories that make you who you are.
There are reasons why people celebrate things like Swiss days or Day of the Dead. It's about one word: culture.
One of my favorite things about going on cruises is meeting people and talking to them. So I had some fun sitting down and asking questions. Today, I've got Jerry Schneider with me. So, Jerry, where the heck are we today?
We are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
What's the thing that you like best about cruising?
I don't have to do any work.
I like that. I like that a lot. True confession, I messed up the audio in one of my interviews, but thank goodness my wife Camille was here to do a little audio check.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick?
See, that now might go on the show.
Wait, what?
I grew up near the beach, and so I remember seeing jellyfish, okay? When you get stung by them, not a good feeling, okay? But when you were aboard the Celebrity, they had glass blowing, so what the heck? I made this jellyfish, okay? And it doesn't sting. Unless you drop it on your foot, but hey. Any idea what we should go do at Cabo?
You need to take a tour boat that brings you out to the, I think it's called the Arches.
Okay,
It's a entry of the harbor,
okay,
and it's a well-known tourist destination.
gotcha.
The tour guide will tell you all about it and the couple different beaches that are in the area and which ones not to go on.
Okay, oh, that's interesting. So
Because
now,
on one side is on the Pacific side, and
Yeah.
it's full of rip currents. So they,
oh, okay,
one side of the beach they call the honeymoon beach,
yes.
and the other side where the rip currents are, they call that the divorce beach.
Okay. I think you've got all kinds of stories about that one. You've heard of Pacific Coast Highway in the U.S., but did you know that Highway number 1 actually starts in Cabo San Lucas, right there at kilometer 0?
This is kilometer 0 of that highway.
Hint, they tell you you really don't want to do it. Our tour guide gave us a little insight, okay? So, you know there's a lot of people that go down to Mexico to get pharmaceuticals, okay? Well, come to find out, they don't have the same rules, and so, yeah, you could get just about anything. There's lots of free tequila tasting in Cabo San Lucas, but just be careful, you might end up looking like this lady. Now, you've probably heard of Cabo San Lucas, but have you heard of San Jose del Cabo? Cabo San Lucas is more the party city. Well, San Jose del Cabo, it's more like the responsible uncle. with another entry into Jessup's Journeys, people, places, and things you might not know about. I'm Doug Jessup. Later in the show, we find out the story behind one of the treasures remembered right here at Anthony's Fine Art and Antiques.
What are your family stories? I'm Nicea DeGering.
I'm Doug Jessup. It would be our honor to help you share your stories with an in-studio interview.
We take out the bloopers, add in your pictures, and give you a digital video to keep.
To schedule your interview, go to FamilyHeritageStories.com.
It's time now for a visit with Brandon Fugel.
With me today, Brandon Fugel. Brandon, thanks for coming on.
It's good to be with you.
I've been able to go all over this state and do road tours and things, and there's this little tiny area, they call it the Basin. The Basin, okay?
Yep.
You're familiar
The
with
Uinta Basin.
The Uinta Basin, you know, it's the vernal area and everything. I remember there was this really cool ceremony out at a little place called Fort Duchesne, okay? And it's the Ute Indian tribes, and they were doing a memorial dance and ceremony and everything. And I was quite impressed by that, in that the traditions and the way that things kind of have been done for a long time. Well, there's all kinds of things that happen out there. And you apparently have a connection to the land right next to those guys.
It's literally in the dead center of the Uinta Basin. If you pull up Google Earth and you locate the exact center of the Uinta Basin, it happens to fall on a unique piece of property that I acquired roughly 5 years ago. This 512-acre assemblage has become really the site of not only global interest, but is the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet. It was part of a Pentagon-funded black budget program that went for years, you know, between 2008 and 2013, and has been the most secure scientific research project delving into the paranormal.
And it's called?
Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch.
I found the ranch to be a surprisingly striking landscape. It's just a beautiful backdrop. It's right out of Westworld or a John Wayne movie. Is just beautiful. I found in time, as our investigation unfolded, that the evidence just continues to get more compelling than ever. And you know, that first 6 months of owning it, I really saw nothing myself that would lead me to believe that there was anything unusual happening. Well, that all changed. And you know, I had really, with multiple witnesses with me, an occasion where we saw what can only be described as an unidentified flying object, a craft 40, 50 foot long silver disc hovering right above the mesa, right in front of us. This wasn't just a blinking light in the sky or something that was a little bit ambiguous. This was a solid object that appeared out of nowhere, could move in the blink of an eye, and in fact, over about a 20-second period, perform maneuvers that I believe defy any propulsion physics that we're acquainted with, and was gone literally in the blink of an eye at the end of the episode, literally either blasted off and was reduced to a dot or blinked out of our view.
So did you do one of those? Did you see that?
We were in shock.
Yeah?
Yeah, we were in complete shock. It caught us all off guard. To this day, I am surprised. Anyone who does their due diligence, anyone who actually conducts any degree of serious due diligence relative to the phenomena, will find that there is absolute reality. You have trained fighter pilots, radar technicians, you have law enforcement professionals, you have thousands of eyewitnesses that will attest and have gone on record to the reality and regarding the reality of what is happening. Things aren't always as they seem, and
That is true.
you know, there's more to our existence on this planet and this universe.
traditions, values, culture.
These stories deserve to be remembered with an in-studio interview.
We take out the bloopers, add in your pictures, and give you a digital video to keep.
For pricing and to schedule your interview with either me or Nicea, go to FamilyHeritageStories.com. Objects with stories, those are treasures remembered. Okay, what is it?
This is the lid to an Egyptian sarcophagus. It is from around 500 BCE. That is about 2,500 years old, so pretty old. People who had this level of sarcophagus done were of a upper class. It's not known who the specific individual was, but it's likely that they were part of an aristocratic family or of the priestly class, most likely. This is from the Ptolemaic period. So the Ptolemaic period is, Egyptian periods run for thousands of years. And the one that's closest to us is the Ptolemaic. It's the era that Cleopatra's from. This predates Cleopatra. So you're wondering what this figure is at the base of this. So this is Hathor. Hathor was one of the most popular deities within Egyptian religion, and the one that at this point the most temples were dedicated to. Hathor was a woman. She was the consort or wife of Horus, the sun god, and that's why she has that disc, that sun-like disc on the top of her head. So she is standing in front of a boat which she has spread her arms out to display. And that is because the purpose of much of the symbolism and the work that relates to the preparation of the body, what was kept with the body, is part of the idea in Egypt that the body was staying in one place, but the soul would continue to move through the afterlife. And everything was either physically prepared or visually and spiritually prepared. So in the case of King Tut, he actually had boats. He actually had furniture that was all entombed with him in order to use in the afterlife. And in the case of this sarcophagus, it's symbolically here. And that's what she's standing in front of. Below, it looks like a kind of cat, a lion, and it's actually a table in the form of that lion. And the body is laid out with the various gods underneath it.
What's this made out of?
You know, it's a little confusing, isn't it? Because it's clearly painted, and it looks like it's largely of one piece. You got age and crack. It's cracked in places, but this is wood. This is wood that has a light layer of gesso over the top, plaster, we would call it. And then they've painted into that wet plaster in order to get all of these colors. They're remarkably well preserved, and that's because in Egypt it is so dry where they buried these bodies. It's not dry around the Nile. It's dry where the mummies and the sarcophaguses were buried. And that means that, I mean, some of these things were exposed to the air even and persisted to survive for a long time. We know that it came out of Egypt in the 1920s when the Egypt craze was happening. That was about the time that King Tut's tomb was discovered. And so there was a lot of effort to go and explore everywhere from Cairo to Luxor. And this was probably picked up out of one of those major regions. An archaeologist went with a team, and it was fairly speculative in the 1920s and 30s when people would go. They would pay the Egyptian government for the rights to keep whatever they found. And the team that went and got this was part of a university team. And the university wanted the documents, but not the sarcophaguses, and or only some choice examples of what was taken. And the archaeologists themselves were able to bring the rest home. And this came from the descendant of one of those archaeologists. You have to have provenance for these kinds of things. It's a fancy term for meaning a chain of custody going back to a particular era. Otherwise, you are in danger of having something that's illegal. Nowadays, you surely cannot go into Egypt and just take things out. But this is not the kind of, because it's not tied directly to a particular figure or a particular site that's deemed important by the Egyptian government, it's not a priority for them to repatriate it either. And so it's not something that, it's not unusual to see these in the market occasionally. We've had 2 sarcophagus lids now.
Wow.
I guess the correct term would be 2 sarcophagi. But this may be, the other one was larger, but this one is better painted.
Oh, well, the conditions, spectacular.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that's 2,500 years old. I had an Egyptologist once tell me this, that Egypt has such a long lifespan that we are actually closer to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to most of the pharaohs whose objects and buildings that she was surrounded by. And so to put it in those terms, it just really gives you an idea of how many millennia and the stability of Egypt as a force culturally at that time.
From old paintings to new videos on your kids' devices, we're all trying to do one thing. We're trying to make a connection. It's the power of stories. How powerful are stories? We asked Maura.
It's priceless. It's priceless to me because when I was first sitting with the guys listening to their stories, it's something you just can't get back. And there's a lot of stories I wish I would have had recorded from my dad, my mom, my grandparents. So at least we were able to get these stories recorded. And to have them videoed and digitized is key, because the younger generation, you know, sitting with my nephews, doing homework with them over COVID, they weren't looking at books, they were looking at screens, and they can look at this on a screen.
I'm Doug Jessup.
And I'm Nicea DeGering. It would be our honor to help tell your family heritage story. Go to our website to schedule an in-studio interview on the Jessup's Journal TV set. Broadcast audio, video, and lighting are already set up to ensure quality control. All you need to do is come to our Salt Lake City studio, and we'll do the rest. Our professional editing staff will take out bloopers and add your pictures to create a private digital video for your devices. Go to FamilyHeritageStories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview. It's our honor to be able to help people remember where they came from.
If stories aren't passed down from generation to generation, the stories are lost, and it's as though those people never existed.
So how do you want to be remembered? With another episode of Family Heritage Stories, I'm Nicea DeGering.
And I'm Doug Jessup.